Good evening, everyone. Today, we're going to look at some of the factors that determine how much you actually pay for your cell phone bill. So, you might be a prepaid customer, you might be a postpaid customer, you might be a broadband customer, it could be anything. But when it comes to a telecom operator, the amount of the cost that they actually have to bear is phenomenal. And this video is just gonna talk a little bit about some of these costs so you know why you're paying what you pay. I know, back in the day, I used to always look at my monthly bill and wonder, what are all these fees? Like, why am I paying them? There's so many taxes and so many, cess fees and so on and so forth. Obviously, it's going to be different from country to country, but then when it comes to the basic costs that any telecom operator has to bear, they're pretty similar. So I actually made a note of some of the major costs that a telecom operator has to bear. So like any business, before you actually start generating any revenue out of it, there are certain fixed costs that you have to take on, just to set up your network. So two broad categories. One category is your capital expenditure or your capex, and this is basically the cost that's associated with procuring any materials for running the business itself. Normally one-time costs, but then things like the infrastructure, the cabling, there are a few others that actually fall under this category. And the second category is operational expenditure or OPEX, and these are your regular operational expenses for running the business. So the telecom operators, they spend a lot of money upfront to build out the entire network, right? So once this network is built, it's going to cost them pretty much the same thing every year, no matter how much data is actually flowing through it, because the network is built to handle a certain capacity. And by capacity, what do I mean? It means, it can handle a certain number of calls at any given point in time. It can have a certain amount of data that can flow through it at any given point of time, basically, the bandwidth. So once this is actually done, you can then charge people to use the network and charge them, right? So and this is how you're actually paying for setting up of the infrastructure itself. Now, the other interesting thing is when it comes to telecom operators, even before they can start running the business, they have to purchase the spectrum. So you hear things like 67 megahertz, 130 megahertz, so on and so on. This is the frequency at which the cell phone waves, like the actual waves through which data is transmitted from your cellular device, actually go through. Now, these are usually government, regulated by the government, and the fees for purchasing spectrum, they're in the billions. I mean, the fees are exorbitant, right? And in some cases, like say for example in India, the way it works is you have to pay a percentage of your adjusted gross revenue as a fees against that spectrum, not to mention the fact that you're going to be paying a fixed cost upfront to secure that spectrum. If we will do a separate video on what happened with Vodafone Idea and their whole structure, because it's absolutely insane, because in some cases the amount that you end up having to pay as a result of this is more than what the telecom business actually made. So more on that later. And in addition to this, government tax or spectrum fees that you like to call it, you also have the taxes or VAT or GST or whatever it is, depending on country to country, which is also applicable on the earnings that the telecom operators have to pay. So as time passes, when the cost of the infrastructure can be recovered, then the telecom operators can actually, come back and think, okay, can we reduce our costs and whatnot? Obviously, bringing even more value to the consumers. Now, The good thing is, telecommunications network across the world, it is one of the deciding drivers of the progress of a country's economy and overall, rate of growth. If you look at tier one countries, the telecom infrastructure that is available or present in those nations is obviously far more advanced. They're already, working on 5G, and in some cases, they're already experimenting with 6G. You have coverage no matter where you go, so on and so on. But obviously, it's very expensive. And the other reason why some of these tier one countries are able to, afford so much is simply because the purchasing capacity of their customers is also that much higher. What we call, the ARPU, average revenue per user. So, for example, in India with 1.3 billion, the population of 1.3 billion, where we have over a billion, mobile devices here, the ARPU is still, less than $2.50 per month, which is when you compare it, let's say, to the US or other places. I mean, you're talking about, $30, $40 in some cases. In the Middle East, it's even over $50. So that makes that's a huge parity that comes into the picture. Another way for the telecom operators to recover some of these costs is, they can lease out their network to other MVNOs who just want to, piggyback on their network. And they might have different types of services and whatnot, but then they have to basically pay a rental fee to the telecom operator that has invested in all the infrastructure. So whatever products they offer has to cover the cost of that rental as well. And now, if we look at some of the other costs that are associated with the setup and operations of a telecom network, we talked about the cost of the spectrum, government licensing fees. We talked about the infrastructure, and by infrastructure, what we're talking about is the hardware and the towers, the antennas, the cabling. BTS, all these different things. These are all capex investments, usually one time, but then over time you're also going to have to keep aside a big chunk of money because you're going to want to upgrade this to, let's say, the latest technology, or to even expand the capacity because you got that many people using your network now. And with the way the data usage is increasing across the world, this is obviously a major cost factor that's in there. Obviously, you need a lot of permits to be able to, lay cables. You have to purchase land. You have to set up your towers. You have to set up the generators that especially in remote locations, you might not even have electricity to keep the entire thing, running all day or all night long, and you might have generators that are put with them the fencing around that so that people don't come and steal the diesel out of the generators. You have the rentals themselves, the office space as well as the space for installation. And if you have noticed, at least here, there are a lot of places where apartments or shopping malls or whatever it is, hotels, they actually the telecom companies actually rent out space on the rooftops to install towers so that you have more coverage and you can get more people into the system actually using it at the same time. um, Marketing costs and ads, I mean, that's also a major cost. But once again, it's no different from a Samsung or an Apple spending upwards of $10 billion every year, simply because it is helping them generate 180 billion or 250 billion dollars, whatever it is. So that so telecom companies also have to spend a lot on marketing because they need to get they need eyeballs on their product, they need eyeballs on their brand, they need people to come and try out the new services, they need people to purchase new SIM cards, they need people to purchase some of the products that they already have. That's how the business gets generated, right? So in addition to this, you have in case you're offering, obviously everybody offers international calls now, but then you have interconnect charges that actually come into the picture. In case you're going to rent out any infrastructure for somebody else, electricity bills, so on and so forth. So there are so many different costs that a telecom operator has to take on. even before they generate a single penny in revenue. Normally, the ratio that they usually do is about, at least once everything is up and running, the costs are usually split, about 40% towards capex and 60% towards opex. So these are, some of the major factors that come into play on, when they actually develop their pricing strategy for their products. So if you go to any telecom operator's website, they have so many different plans with so many different features. Some of them have free SMS, some of them have data built in, some of them have on-net minutes included for free. Some of them have on-net and off-net included. So the permutations and combinations are, I mean, they're ginormous. I mean, some of the places that we worked with before, and the other interesting thing is you might have plans that were created, let's say 10 years ago, that might still be in the system, although these days a lot of them are getting phased out. But at any given point, it's not inconceivable to think that there might be, at least about 70 to 80 different plans that you could actually purchase. You might not be able to, see all of them on the website at the same time. But if you call the customer care center and you tell them, what you're actually looking for, they'll let you know. And now with the way that the market is heading, where you get to pick and choose exactly what you want. Like, say for example, I travel around a lot, so I want international roaming. Somebody else, doesn't travel, they don't want it. I don't make, too many phone calls. I use a lot of data. So I should be able to, pick and choose all my different services. So basically the permutations and combinations are pretty much endless at this point. But having said that, once again, what it comes down to is the amount of money that, the telecom operators actually have to shell out, and the taxes that are associated um, with the amount of revenues that they earn, which at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, is passed on to the consumer. There's only so much that an opco can, say that, okay, we're going to do good by our consumers, but at some point that cost is going to trickle down. So to conclude, there are so many different factors that come into the picture to determine how much you actually pay for your plans. But unfortunately, the governments and the telecom regulators as well within the different countries. Obviously, it's completely regulated, especially with security concerns now. They don't want data leaving the country. They want everything to be hosted and handled, within the telcos network itself. Totally understand it, but then a lot of governments have realized what a cash cow the telecom business really is, simply because everybody is online. Everybody is using the internet. Everybody is consuming content. Everybody is, spending a lot of money online. And as a result of that, I mean, by online, I mean not just on telco products, but online shopping, on, getting stuff delivered, mobile banking. Um, I mean, everything basically. And this is made possible only by the infrastructure that the telecom networks, or now that the big technology companies are actually, kind of doing uh, on their own. So the governments have realized that it's an absolutely massive cash cow, and they've been hiking the taxes. Like, say for example, you have, in addition to the spectrum fees and, the percentage of the adjusted gross revenue, you also have, telecom regulator fees. You have other, schemes that the government comes up with. They might look like, only 1% or 2% or 3% or whatever it is, but then if you start adding up all the different charges, I mean, it pretty much adds up. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the consumer themselves, or in some cases, if, as long as the telecom operators can actually shield the consumer from it, they try and take on all the costs by themselves. But then at some point that may stop, or the other way for them to recoup that is to increase the average cost of the packs and plans that you actually purchase. So I hope that kind of gives an idea of what is actually involved in how much you actually pay for your bill every month. And if anybody has any comments, please let me know. We'll figure out. We'll do another video on Vodafone idea, separately. But for now, for tonight, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.